What is up, guys? My name is Sparky Midori, otherwise known as the Prince of Darkus, and this is a Yu-Gi-Oh! Structure deck. I thought I had a box on me, apparently I do not, so ignore the fact that it's a JPEG. Anyway, if you know Yu-Gi-Oh!, those decks are pretty much just pre-built, pre-planned decks that are just ready to go and play. They might not win you tournaments, but they at least are usable. This is what I and a lot of other people who play Yu-Gi-Oh! On a budget end up using because they don't have loads of money to spend on hundreds of boosters to get the cards they want. Structure decks, they have the cards listed on what they have the quantities listed there, you know exactly what you're getting and you know what you're buying. But, like I said, these decks are not going to win you any tournaments. They're not the best. But what a lot of players end up doing is they'll buy 3 copies of the same deck to make sure they have a full playset of the best cards from that deck to make one ultimate deck. And that's what I decided to do today with Bakugan. Ignore the noise, there's Bakugan in here. You see, at the start of the reboot, all the way back, I think it was 2019 or 2020, whatever it was, we had these different starter decks with Bakugan included, 3 Bakugan, a character cards, 40 card deck, cores, and all the like. Basically everything you needed to play the Pro TCG in one box. It was very expensive though, and there weren't a lot made. They were made all the way up until I think it was Secrets of the Geogon or Geogon Rising, whatever it was, and then it stopped. So I decided I'm going to take the first 3 packs of the pre-built decks that Bakugan released in the reboot, and I wanted to make the ultimate decks that I possibly could with the cards included in these boxes, like you would with the structure decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! In modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Duels. It's something. So, in my custom Bakugan deck box, and if you haven't seen the video I made for this thing a couple years ago, please check it out in the corner here somewhere. I don't know which corner it's going to be in. I've got 3 different structure decks, with the first set of the cards and decks that were made for the reboot, and we're going to analyze these decks bit by bit, and I'll be honest, I am very upset that the deck that I chose at the start is literally the worst out of all 3. Anyway, let's get to analyzing these decks. Their cards, they're not anything to write home about. They're all just 300 base vanilla Bakugan, except Fangzor. Ooh, he has an effect. He has an effect that when he opens, the opposing Bakugan gets -1 damage. That's it. I mean, look, the toys still look amazing. I will not deny that. They still look pretty damn good. But now, let's just stop going over the toys and let's go over the actual deck and the strategy we have for this, which is pretty stupid, actually. Also, I'm sorry if you hear like birds in the background. My family decided to get birds and they won't shut up. Okay, so strategy in this deck is pretty much just stall till you can do something. So for Fangzor, his 2 cores are an Orange Shield Fire Fist. For the Fire Fist, you have a -5, so that if we lose a battle at the start of the game, which we most likely will, unless my opponent misses the roll, in which case then we get to attack, and a +300 Orange Shield. This is just in case, we actually do manage to start a fight a little bit. Then the Hydrus, it is a +100 +3 for specifically Prince of Darkus, and then another +100 +3 for Prince of Darkus. Then lastly, for Garganoid, we have another -5 damage, and for the Helix, we have, a +300 +3. I put these traps here specifically so we can at least last the first 2 rolls until we have enough energy to start playing cards in our hand. And of course, the boosting cores just, so I have something to actually work with and not just end up landing on my own trap cores by accident. Okay, now the actual cards themselves. Remember, the strategy is stall, stall, and stall some more. So, for the flip cards, by the way, there's like no synergy in this deck whatsoever. The other decks have got synergy, but this one, absolutely nothing. So, we got 3 copies of Cease Outsiders to stop any non-Darkus, because, we kind of need to stop anything and everything as possible. And with this deck, we will lose a fair few fights. For Ventus, we have Repel Outsiders, stop any non-Ventus, and the last flip we have is 3 copies of Nature Assimilation, or I believe this is called Photosynthesis in the American, the English-only card sets, whereas in the international one, which is the one I have, is Nature Assimilation. Now for the Evos, we are going to run 2 copies of every single Evo. I was going to run 3 copies of Titan Garganoid, but it looks like I only have so I was going to run 3 copies of this thing, but it looks like I only have 2, so I just ran that with the deck. Oh, by the way, there's no proxies in this deck at all. These are all cards that I own. So the Fangzor, it's 2 energy to get out, 400B, 6 dip punchy. When this opens, -3 damage. Okay, now we're talking some good effects. You know, -3 punchy, that's good. High B power Bakugan often have low damage. For the Garganoid, this is the stupidest effect I've ever seen on a card. For a 5 cost Bakugan, 900B, 6. Victor, copy the next action you play. So this only really applies to damaging cards. So if I have a card that lets me add punchy to my Bakugan, cool. I get to now do more damage than that. So if my card allows me to do 2 damage, I actually do 4 damage because I'm doing twice the action. But it doesn't really help you in any other situation. Then we have Hyper Hydrus, which is by far, I think, the best Evo in this deck. For 3 cost, you don't get a big buff in B, but you do get a massive buff in damage. And on a Green Fist, and last I checked, this deck allows us to carry 2 Green Fists. It gets an extra 600 B. So you can get 1150 B on a plus 150 Fist, but I decided to give him plus 100. So you're going to get 1100. That's the Evos. Again, not very good, but remember, I worked with what I had and what was available in this deck specifically. I didn't use any other cards in the Battle Brawlers set, only what came in the structure decks. Okay, now we have some synergy going. We're gonna have 3 copies of Turn to Energy, 2 cost, Energize this uncharged. This will actually work a lot with cards we have later down the line, especially with the photosynthesis or nature assimilation. To give us the turbo effect, there was only 1 card in this entire deck that had a turbo effect, which I didn't think was worth running. So instead, we're going to run Invigoration Blast, the only card that works with high energy counts. For 5 energy, 1 punchy for each energy you have. Doesn't have to be charged or uncharged, just energy. So if I have 5 energy, I play this, I'm going to have 5 extra punchy. If I play that on an evolved Garganoid though, so Titan Garganoid, I'm going to have plus 10 punchy instead because I'm getting to Victor copying the next thing I play. That's if I already run the battle, and I get to do extra damage. Now, remember, this whole deck is stalled. That was pretty much all the good cards. So we got 2 copies of Piercing Scream to just lower enemy B power to try and stall, if we can, somehow get a high enough B power. Now here's the real stall cards. 2 copies of Shock and Awe, plus 4 punchy to me, and the opponent gets -3 B power, 300 B. So I guess if you pair with this, you can sort of minus 500 B. 700 B, but yeah, it's a bit expensive. We're also going to run 2 copies of Terrify, -6 punchy to the opposing Bakugan, so if we lose, at the very least, we're not going to take a lot of damage, or no damage at all. Now, that's pretty much all the stall and lowering cards I have. Next, we got Prismatic Bolt, 4 energy for 300 plus 6. So hey, look, at the very least, we're going to be hitting high numbers if we do win a fight. Next, we got 3 copies of Stone Skin, a very good card, just 3 cost. Discard a card, you can get 800 B off of it, or just 200 if you don't have a card to sacrifice, but let's face it, you want all the B power you can get in this deck. Next we have 2 copies of Storm Generator, 3 energy for plus 300 B sacrifice. You can discard a card to return this to your hand, so it just recycles, I guess. Nothing really great there. Next, another amazing card at the start of the reboot, 3 energy for Smoke Armor, plus 500 B. Now this is the best card in the deck. 3 copies of Ice Barrier plus 400 B. You can see there's no synergy in this deck whatsoever. It is literally just a mash-pash together deck. I feel so bad that this was the first deck I ever bought for the reboot. But hey, the other 2 decks are going to be much better. I can assure you that. Okay, next we got the Hydrus Ultra starter deck. The Bakugan it comes with. We got some staples here. Not so much this one. This one's a mid Bakugan. But early Battle Planet Aqua's Core Fangzor was an absolute menace. This thing has a great Evo card. Good, decent B power to start off with. The Hydrus is nothing crazy. Plus it's got the ugly mold. I'm sorry, I don't like it. And of course we got Chaos Cornelius. This thing absolute monster. If you can get the specific Evo card that I'm talking about, you guys know. If you know, you know. But sadly, this structure deck does not come with that Evo, so I could not use it in this deck. Anyway, for cores, we're not going to play Scaredy Cat this time around. We can actually do something good with this. So for the Fangzor, we gave it a +2 punchy, and we gave it a +250 +3, because let's face it, this thing doesn't exactly have a lot of punchy to work with. For the Hydrus, we gave it a +400 on a Prince of Darkus orange shield, and then for its helix, we gave it a +600 -3, because even if we do get this core and we minus our punchy, we still have 2 punchy to work with after that. And for Nilius, we gave it, of course, the 2 best scores you could in this deck, +600 magic shield, +250 +3 fire fist. Okay, so now for these Bakugan's Evos, we're gonna run 2 copies of Hyper Nilius. For 2 energy, it gets to 500B, +6 punchy on a magic shield, +200 on fire fist, +2 punchy. 2 copies of the Hyper Hydrus, 606 for 2 energy. Cheap Bakugan, cheap Bakugan. Here's where it gets crazy. We're gonna run 3 copies because this is the best one out of the entire pack for Hyper Fangzor. 4 cost for 1000B, 3 punchy. When you play this, draw 3 cards. This is an amazing card to have in this deck as a start. Like, it's already so much better than the Aquas Garganoid Ultra deck. Then for flips, we're gonna run 3 copies of Counter Outsiders. We're gonna also run 3 copies of Block Outsiders. That is all the flips we're gonna run in this deck. We don't need many more because we will win with this deck, I guarantee, at least a few fights. Now, this deck has synergy. The other one had nothing to work with. This one, however, has got a lot. We're going to run 3 copies of Greater Water Boost. We're going to run 2 copies of Ebb because it has a flow effect of, if you play another card this turn, +5 punchy instead. We're going to run 2 copies, of Hurricane Slash for 3 energy, +200B. And if you play another card this turn, you can return this to your hand. So it's a constant cheap, just extra B power card. We have a very cheap Tides for 1 energy, 200B, but flow if you play another card this turn, +400. Amazing start. Then we also have Mind Flow, 2 energy, +2 punchy, +2 punchy for every other card you've played this turn. If you empty out your entire hand of Greater Water Boost, you could get +6 punchy. That is cool for a whole 2 energy. We're also going to run 3 copies of Ritual Power for 1 cost, 1 energy for each Baku core your Bakugan hold. Considering that the Hydrus can double core, that can be good for, like, if you try to build up towards a team attack and get cards out last minute to make sure you win and get that team attack. We're going to run 3 copies of Talon Slash, +4 punchy. If the Bakugan's damage becomes greater than 10, you can draw a card. And that will definitely be the case with these Bakugan's Evos, because, this one not really going to get that high of a punchy. Damage, but the Hydrus could definitely get +10, and the Nilius can also definitely get +10 on his damage. We're gonna run 3 copies of Fire Boost, just a cheap +400 card. Gonna run 3 copies of Bone Defense, really cheap, really good B power boost for the time, and we're also gonna run 3 copies of Colonel Armstrong. When your Bakugan attacks, you can draw a card. So every single turn you're getting to draw an extra card, and you get to then possibly do more flow effects, and if not, you get to at least get an Evo on your Bakugan and get towards the what I was saying here for Talon Slash. You get all sorts of shenanigans going with this deck. It works so much better than the Garganoid deck did. Okay, lastly, we have arguably, this isn't even an argument, this is the best deck out of all 3 that I could possibly make. And it has more synergy than both those other decks combined. We have the Halcor Ultra starter set from Battle Planet. We got a Auralus Core Pegatrix, we got a Pyrus Core Dragonoid, and we got the Chaos Halcor Ultra. All of them have B. It's pretty varying. We got a 300 4 punchy double helix. We got a 205 damage. We got a 604 on a green fist +3, so you can get to 1,000 already on its own. And now the cores for these things. For the Pegatrix. For Pegatrix, we're just going to give it the +150 +2. It doesn't need to worry about lowering the opponent's B power because this thing's going to get to over 1,000 already on its own. For the Dragonoid, we're going to run a +150 +4 Fire Fist, because that's what came in the box, plus a 150, plus 2 Green Fist. And for the Hollow Core, we're going to just run the simple plus 300, plus 3, because I cannot risk lowering this thing's punchy if it's only going to get to 900B. But now here's where it really shines, the cards that are in the deck. Oh my goodness, wait till you see this. For the Evos, we're going to run 2 copies of Hyper Dragonoid. We're going to run 3 copies of the Titan Hollow Core, and we're also going to run 2 copies of the Hyper Pegatrix. I try to focus on the Ultras a lot in these decks because these things were exclusive to these structure decks. But I think the Pegatrix is definitely the best out of all these ones because it's cheap, easy to get out, and you get insanely high B power. For Battle Planet days, this was good. And then for the flips, sadly, this deck I did have to proxy cards for because I didn't have all of them in my collection. We have Stand Together, 4 energy, stopping on Chaos Domination. If you're back on holding the most cards, you can play this for free. And this is the whole gimmick to this deck, Domination. So, for the other flips, we got 3 copies Black Outsiders, and we also have 3 copies of Halt Outsiders. We got a lot of flips in this deck because if we don't get to use these, we get to have at least a lot of energy to play some cards later down the line, which there are some expensive cards in this deck, but we can play them for cheap, easy soon. So now we get to see the synergy play. We're going to have 3 copies of Stoic Shot. For 2 energy, draw a card. Domination, if you're holding the most cores, you can draw 2 cards instead. So we will have Domination because of things like... Okay, we'll get to that in a second. Let me show you the other cards we have that work with Domination. We're going to have 3 copies of Philomena Dusk. She's expensive, 6 energy for plus 200 to your Bakugan. But the stacks, so you get plus 600 base already. So the Dragonoid we mentioned earlier at base, if he doesn't evolve, but we have 3 copies of Philomena out, we're going to start already at 800B without any increases. That's a very good boy. We're also going to have 3 copies of Light's Courage, 400B, plus 400B, but Domination, we get plus 800 instead. We're also going to run 3 copies of Inferno Wings. Now these are the cards that are going to help us get these Domination cards off. Inferno Wings is cheap, 3 copies of this one for plus 300B, and remove all the cores from your enemy Bakugan and negate their effects. All enemy cores, So in other words, even the ones standing outside of the battle, just their cores gone, poof, they don't exist anymore. You're going to have Domination for the rest of the game. We're also going to have 3 copies of Consort. Just simple, attach a core from the field to your Bakugan. You got Domination there already. You have more cores in your hand. On your Bakugan. We're also going to have 3 copies of Hot Potato. It's basically the same thing as Consort, just in reverse. And now that was pretty much all of the cards that are going to help us get the Domination effects off. But you see what I mean. This deck already has so much more synergy than the other 2. We're going to run 3 copies of Fierce Boost, plus 200 Fury if you have no other cards in hand, plus 600 instead. And the other cards are cheap, so I'm pretty sure we can get that no problem. And lastly, we're also going to run 3 copies of Magma Boost, 4 energy for plus 700. This deck actually destroys. Not so much for all the B boosting cards, but for the pure domination this deck can pull off with core manipulation so early into the reboot's life. Before we had core shenanigan Bakugan with core effects on their character cards. This deck, out of all 3 of these, is the best. It's not going to win you any games by today's modern Bakugan standards with how bad power creep is in the later lines with evolutions and legends and stuff. But for Battle Planet, I think this is the best structured deck I can make using the cards that were available in the boxes. Okay, that is that. So this was actually a really fun exercise to try and make the best decks I possibly could with what was available in the boxes at the time, which were not good, or at least not in the case of the Gargoyle Ultra deck. The Hollow Core Ultra deck, though, goodness gracious, that thing was a monster compared to the other 2. And I actually want to make more. I want to do so many more of these things. There were a bunch of other structured decks that were released for Bakugan, and I want to do the same exercise where I take the cards that came from those boxes, imagine I bought 3 boxes of them, and try and make the best deck possible with them. It's such a fun exercise. And let me know if you guys want to see these decks used in a fight, specifically amongst each other, not against another deck, because any other deck outside of like these things going against each other, like structure deck versus structure deck, these things are gonna get destroyed, absolutely destroyed. I know, I've tried. Yeah, let me know if you guys want to see that, and I'll try and arrange that to make that happen with some friends or my girlfriend or my sister or whoever to try and face off against me using these decks. And yes, I'll be bitter and I will use the Garganoid deck specifically to try and prove a point that I'm good at the game. Can you shut up, Truck? Thank you. Yeah, anyway, let me know what you guys thought, and let me know if you want to see battles, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.